You might have the tendency, the worst aspect of things, and there's people like that. If you say something, they'll say the most negative thing in the conversation, because those are the people that tend to bring stress into their lives, anxiety into their lives, because they're always thinking the worst or believe that the worst will happen. A lack of hope or confidence in the future. It's tough when you have, and mind you, I had those people in counseling all the time, but thank God that I'm not dealing with that anymore, because it's negative as a self-talk, and they say how stupid they are. They put themselves down using words which he had used ever so often since he was a child. So this is something that's repeated because it's never gotten resolved. Proper management can positively affect your emotional health and your general health. Okay, so we got to identify stressors. That's the first step to proper management. And we always, what I learned in counseling and why it was effective is because we always identified what it was. See, and when you identify what the cause is, you're able to
Welcome to Flora. Get ready for empowering talk.
Welcome to the Flora Padilla Show. I am so happy to be with you again. Join me every week, because I love to talk to you every week. And I just want to remind you that I have 3 books for sale, and they're right here. And all 3 of them are selling at Amazon, but these 2 you can still buy from me. And I thank the ones that already have bought some of these books already. So thank you. And make sure that you put like on the page, and share or make a comment or invite somebody. And then also remember, I'm on YouTube, so you can subscribe, and if you subscribe, it goes directly to you, so that way you don't miss any of my messages, and either one of my messages, because once you subscribe on YouTube, it automatically goes to you. And also, if you have any good testimonies or something that you want to share, I can put it on my website, and my website is mendingbrokenheartsministry.org. I already have I have Alona's son there, I have Lizzie's son there, and I have Melody and Cassandra. So if you and Kai, I'm going to be talking about Kai probably next week, but I'm going to get permission from Kai's mom to let me show the pictures of before and after, because that was a miracle. And I want you to let me know if you want me to share anything. So this week, I'm talking about stress. Last week I talked about anxiety, and they're kind of related but different, because stress, I think we're full of stress most of the time, and a lot of people carry anxiety in them. So what emotions are caused by stress? So I'm going to give you some of the emotions that are caused by stress. Emotional stress causes emotional distress and pain to the person. So keep that in mind. They trigger negative feelings such as, and I'll name them, they trigger off anger, jealousy, hatred, heartache, and depression. So it seems like everything goes towards depression. So I think that what we all have to deal with is trying to not get that stress to overtake us. Is stress an emotion? Stress is a feeling of emotional or physical tension. It can come from any event or thought that makes you feel frustrated or angry or nervous. So that's how stress comes upon us. Stress is your body's reaction to a challenge or a demand. In short bursts, stress can be positive, such as when it helps you avoid danger or meet a deadline. So remember, everything, all the emotions in us can be bad and they can be good. So what we try to do is use them for the good. In other words, instead of being angry, We try to be happy and get along with people. So we have to do a lot of practicing. Stress is a term that can cause anyone to cringe because it affects people of all age. Like, in other words, it has it can happen to older people, younger people, even young kids. Some young kids have a lot of anxiety. So we have to remember that stress can come upon anyone at any time. It is a reaction by the body to any demand or threat one experiences, and it causes one to feel uncontrollably overwhelmed and anxious by whatever issue. So something can really overtake you, and you have to not allow it to go that far. How do we manage stress? An issue that overwhelms one person does not necessarily overwhelm the next person. It is not a one-size-fits-all. So we have to remember that everybody reacts differently. There's some people that are very calm and nothing bothers them, and then there's the other person that everything bothers them. So we got to be right in the middle. This is why it's crucial to understand the causes and effects of anxiety. That was my topic last week. Okay, I talked about that last week. So how to identify your stressors and ways to manage, like seeking someone to help you with stress. I had to go to someone after my car accident because I just, a lot of emotions were there that I had to deal with, but I didn't want to deal with them by myself. So I went to a person, and I have to admit that helped. Many situations, pressures, and conditions can affect people differently because we're all different and we all react different. So that makes sense to me. Causing manageable anxiety at different moments, and they are known as stressors. And they can be external or internal factors. What stress management is, why is it important to us? Why do we have to maintain? The public label the condition as a bad thing, but it is a healthy response to situations. Stress can drain the highest spirit of souls. It can have a negative effect on every aspect of a person's life, including their health, emotional well-being, relationships, and their career. A lot of people have lost their jobs because the job just stresses them out to the point where they get too stressed out to where they have to look for another job. And that happens to a lot of people. However, not all stress is harmful. Good stress is actually energizing. To identify 3 examples of good stress. Okay, there's 5 beneficial tools to manage the stress in your life, whether it is good, bad, or somewhere in between. Okay, I'm going to give you examples of good stress. Okay, champion stress. I call it champion stress. Okay, it's life-saving stress or champion stress. It's an important example of good stress. You may have heard stories in which a person performs an impossible achievement of physical strength in order to save their life or the life of someone they love. So that's it's called champion stress, a life-saving stress. For instance, when a panicked father lifts a several-ton vehicle from his child trapped underneath, the father's ability is to access superhuman strength is due to a powerful surge of increasing rates of blood circulation. In other words, that father, all of a sudden, he just gets this overwhelming strength through stress because he knows he needs it to save his son's life. And that's a good stress. This is one example of good stress. The stress of aiming high, okay, that's another kind of stress, because if you're wanting to achieve things and you have goals and you have dreams and you have visions, this is called the stress of aiming high. Stress that goes with aiming for a goal that can inspire and make it more exciting. So that brings stress. Let me give you an example. A prize-winning weightlifter who wants to increase the amount of weight he can bench press in a matter of weeks experience the stress of aiming high because he wants to win and he wants to achieve this goal that he has. So he's aiming high. So he has to prepare himself for that. So when a person aims for a goal with a deadline, it could be a source of stress. However, giving oneself enough time to work steadily towards a realistic goal makes this situation a source of good stress. So all these are good stress. So that's why, like I always say, there's good anger and bad anger. I don't think there's good depression and bad depression, but so in this case, there is good and bad. Positive, this is the third one, positive, major life change stress. Okay, this is a good one because you're changing something, you're changing the page. A positive major life change, like getting married, for instance, can be a source of a good stress if you're marrying the right person. But it's still stressful. Regardless of how good the change is, an important life shifts comes with an unknown change that can be stressful. See, changes are stressful because you don't know if it's going to land out for good or for bad, but it's still a good stress. A person may wonder if they have what it takes to fulfill the requirement of their new role, or they may worry about the new experience they're likely to face. So that brings stress, but that's not a bad stress. Stress caused by a positive major life change can be beneficial because it causes a person to step out of the comfort zone and learn new skills. So that's a good stress. And so not all stress is bad. There's 5 sample stress management tools, so I'm going to give you those. There are many examples of good stress that empowers us, but even good stress can become overwhelming. So here are 5 simple ways to manage stress in your life, be it good or bad. Okay? So remember, stress can be good or bad. Let other people know when you do not have time to fulfill the request. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I know I used to, I'm trying not to be that person anymore. I was overly responsible because that brings a lot of stress, and that's not a good stress. So I'm not doing that anymore. Okay, minimize contact. Individuals and situations can become triggers for stress. Okay, you got to recognize people or circumstances that cause stress for you and minimize your contact with them. Okay, so that's another thing. If something or someone brings a lot of stress into your life, minimize it. You don't have to be with them all the time. You don't have to see them every day. In fact, if you can help it, you can see them maybe once a week or every 2 weeks or once a month. So minimize that. Express your feelings. To me, expressing feelings has always been my victory. Because I remember, and this is outside of this, but I remember when my children were growing up, some people would say, well, you don't have to tell your children everything. And I said, I do, because I don't want them to hear some negative things. And I could have told them that. And that way they don't have to be hurt or destroyed because of something I did. So we're going to go ahead and take a short break, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Flora Padilla Show. It's so good to have you back again. And remember, I left on expressing your feelings. I was sharing with you that people would tell me, why do you tell your children everything? Well, I'm glad that I did, because that way they know everything. And I praise God for that, because secrets are not good. So anyway, you know the saying is, you're as sick as your secrets. So, okay, stress can be the results of unresolved issues and unexpressed feelings, okay? So that's why it's important that you express your feelings. Let those around you know how you feel. And that's so important. Okay, now to manage your time. That's a big one. Because nowadays people don't have time for this or to have time for that. And so it makes it hard on other people because they're not managing their time correctly. So manage your time and schedule activities in a way that leaves ample time to complete what you need to do without rushing. That was my life. Rush, 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 rush. I'd grab a sandwich and eat it on the way. But thank God that my life is not there anymore. Revise your do list, okay? I'm going to share this. I had this young man. He was probably in his late 40s. Anyway, I wanted to help him. So I used to help him in Bible study and in different areas. But I couldn't counsel him because he had a very jealous wife. She was extremely jealous. So anyway, I had them both come in so that I could counsel them and kind of figure out where the problem was coming from. Because he would tell me things and she'd show up once in a while at church, but hardly ever. He was always there. Anyway, he would say that she was always putting him down and just knocking him down. And I would always lift him up. So anyway, I brought him in and I told the lady, okay, you have just complained about 20 minutes about your husband. And he hasn't said too much about you, although I already knew, but he let her talk. So she says, well, I ask him to do this, and I ask him to do that, and he doesn't do anything, and he doesn't work, and I have to work. So she was bitter, and she was angry. So I told her, well, I'll tell you what. I told him, why don't you do a do list, a honey-do list, okay? And I told her to do it, and for him to do the things that were on the list. So he said that sounded good to him. So she did. She made a honey-do list and handed it to him. And so I had him come the next week. And I said, well, I asked her, did he do at least one thing in the do list or a couple of things in the honey-do list? And she said, he did everything. I go, he did everything on that honey-do list? That was a long list. So I started to wonder where the root of the problem was coming from. And anyway, that had a sad ending, so I won't talk about that. But anyway, he fulfilled his part, and I thought, wow, he really wants his marriage to work. But it seemed like she was already too angry and too fed up, and she didn't want any help. So revise your to-do list. And I just threw that in. It has nothing to do with stress. Of course, he had anxiety and he was stressful. So was she. A to-do list is a mile long, is stressful. Okay? And he had a mile long honey-do list, but it didn't stress him out. He wanted to do it. Omit unnecessary activities or chores from your list of things to do. So that's what I do. I make a list, but if I accomplish one thing during the day, I feel great. Because before I had to accomplish all 12 things in one day. Now if I do one, I feel really good about myself, and I don't stress myself out anymore. So good stress, like champion stress, the stress of aiming high, or major life change stress, is energizing. So these are good kind of stressors. However, even good stress requires management. Use helpful tools like time management, techniques, and editing your to-do list to control the stress in your life and allow it. to work for you and not against you. So you want it to work for you. And now the way I'm doing my list, it's working for me because I don't have to do all those things. Thank God. Praise God. Okay, now we have the fighting stressors. To what causes stress as the body responds as a way to protect itself and keep going. Therefore, proper management can positively affect your emotional health and your general health. Okay, so we got to identify stressors. That's the first step to proper management. And we always, what I learned in counseling and why it was effective is because we always identified what it was. See, and when you identify what the cause is, you're able to work and get a resolution. So, but it's not easy as it may sound. I will list some everyday stressors, but it's easy to overlook how your behavior or thought affected your stress level every day. Are you often worried about work deadlines? Do you put things off often? If yes, you got to examine yourself and see if you have these symptoms. I'm not a person to put things off. I just, if I have to do something, I do it. I will not put it off. So common internal stressors, okay, inability to accept uncertainty. In other words, you're not willing to accept things. You might have the tendency, the worst aspect of things, and there's people like that. If you say something, they'll say the most negative thing in the conversation because those are the people that tend to bring stress into their lives, anxiety into their lives, because they're always thinking the worst or believe that the worst will happen. A lack of hope or confidence in the future. It's tough when you have, and mind you, I had those people in counseling all the time, but thank God that I'm not dealing with that anymore. Because it's negative as a self-talk, and they say how stupid they are. They put themselves down using words which he had used ever so often since he was a child. So this is something that's repeated because it's never gotten resolved, and that's probably why this person has more stress than the norm. At that moment, it seemed to him that his life had consisted of one mistake after another, and now he's 31. And he was well into the stupidest of all. It's possible to gain control over our most anxious thoughts. And that's what he has to do. That person has to take charge of his anxious thoughts and self-destructive behavior through meditating on God's Word. That's my experience. That's what has helped me to overcome all the odds that have come against me. You need to be your own cheer squad, not your worst enemy. You know how they say you're your worst enemy? Many are their worst enemy. Instead of cheering themselves up and encouraging themselves, they go to the worst places. So I would recommend that you start talking good about yourself. He had always thought of himself as a victim. And remember last week I talked about the ego? Okay, this is the opposite. When I say you got to think good about yourself, meaning not that you're so everything, but that you're not a bad person. You can communicate well. Just self-talk, and not see yourself as a victim. Because if you see yourself as a victim, you're going to stay as a victim. So unrealistic expectations, lack of flexibility. That's one of the things that I've always been able to do. And they say a great leader will flex. And I've always been able to flex when I have to. It's, you don't want to, but I that's one thing that I have. I've always been able to flex with whatever comes. Some people have all or nothing attitude. In other words, they want it to work their way or else it's not going to work. People need to always be perfect. That was me a long time ago. Thank God it's not me. I think when it went away is when I had my first child, and she threw up some milk on my jacket. I think that's the day that all me being perfect was out the window. So yeah, I always wanted everything perfect until I had my first child. Some examples of external stressors, and here are some examples, and that's in the outside. Major life changes, such as death of a loved one, a divorce, a military deployment, career that requires one to be away from home often, work or school, relationship difficulties, financial worries, being too busy, children and family. Left untreated, everyday stress can lead to chronic stress. If you feel depressed or hopeless, okay, because remember, all these things that I talk about on emotions, they all tend to go to depression. So we have to keep an eye on that and watch ourselves. So if you feel depressed or hopeless, seek help from your doctor or a mental health professional right away. The earlier you seek treatment, the greater the chances of successful coping with stress. So I just suggest you change your way of thinking. Don't expect the worst, because there's always hope and there's always good things in this life. So anyway, I don't know, but I might continue on this subject. Just depends if God gives me another topic. But I feel like this topic is needed more. I'm just feeling that because people are pretty stressed out, and we need to take control of our stress. But remember to put a comment. Remember, you could subscribe. All my messages, all you have to do is go to YouTube's and hit subscribe, and then go to mendingbrokenhearts.org, my website, or hit share and share it with somebody else. And some of you are doing it, so I thank you for doing that. So I'll see you next week.